ladies and gentlemen. We're live here. Wait. Okay. Now we're recording. There we go. Okay. So quadratics. I don't like that color. Okay. Quadratics. So quadratics are anything of the form y equals x squared, y equals x squared plus 5x, y equals 2x squared minus 3x plus 9. All of those are called quadratics, okay? Because they're it's the highest degree term is what? What's the highest degree term? Squared, right, or a 2, right? So that's a quadratic. A cubic, the highest degree term is 3. We've talked about all this, okay? But does anyone know what shape that makes if I graph it?
Square.
Makes a square? We haven't graphed those yet. Does anyone know what shape a quadratic makes if I were to graph it? We'll do this later, Charlie. Very good. It makes a, so if I graph a quadratic, it makes a U-shaped or a parabola, okay? That looks like that, okay? And it doesn't always look like that. It depends which, and we'll talk more about that later on in the chapter, okay? And why that is, okay? But if they say solve, so now we're going to talk about ways to solve quadratics. So if I say solve x squared minus 9 equals 0, this is kind of notes right now, okay? The way I know, anyone tell me how I could solve this? That we're going to do that in a second. But the way we learned to solve it in the last chapter is to write this as two factors. What two things multiply to x squared and add to, or multiply to negative 9 and add to 0? Because there's no middle term. This is the difference of two squared. What? Positive 3 and negative. So, right, if I multiply this times this, right, and apply the zero product property, I drew my little squiggly line, I get x minus 3, x equals negative 3 over here, right? And x equals positive 3 over here. Remember that? Okay? But this is kind of a pain in the neck. So we're going to do instead, the other way to do this is what Calvin said to do, okay? X squared minus 9 equals 0, and I'm going to add 9 to both sides. Plus 9 plus 9, okay? That gives me x squared equals 9. Now what can I do? I square root both sides, right? So I take my square root, I square root that side, and I square root that side. What do I get? Or x equals negative, it equals plus 3 or negative 3. So when you square root both, because negative 3 times negative 3 gives you 9, and positive 3 times positive 3 equals 9. Okay? So when you do this method, you have to remember that when you square root both sides, you have to take the plus square root as well as a negative square root. Okay? There's no i's in there yet. Okay? But you have to take a positive square root and a negative square root. So this is called the principle of square roots. The principle of square roots. Whereas I'm going to do a new page. Okay? Principle. How do you spell that principle? Like that? You know? Not principle, that would be the principle of the school. Is that the same way? Principle of square roots says that if x squared equals k, okay, then this is something you should write in your notes, okay? Then x equals plus or minus, that's how you read that, plus or minus the square root of k, okay? So, I'm going to give you an example now. So, solve for x. 5x squared equals 60. Not on your whiteboards. I'm going to just give you an example, then I'm going to give you you try. How do I do this? What should I do first? Yeah, so you do it just like you're solving an equation. You divide both sides by 5, divide both sides by 5. I get x squared. What's 60 divided by 5? 12. So x equals what?
4.
Plus or minus the square root of 12. So this isn't perfect. If you left it like this, I would take like maybe half a point off because I always want you to simplify. Okay? What perfect square is in 12?
4.
4 and 3. I mean, so I could rewrite this as plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. What's the square root of 4? 2. So that's equal to plus or minus 2 root of 3. And that would be your best answer. This would be okay, but this is better. All right? Understand? Okay, you ready to you try? Okay, you try. Who try? You try. Okay, here we go. You try. On your whiteboards, 4y squared. Ooh. 4y squared. 4y squared equals 12. Go ahead. Give that one. Give that my favorite movie, love. We're live. Here we go. So here's another example. So, and then I'm going to give you, will I give you another you try? Yeah, maybe so. So say I had 3x squared minus 1 equals 0. So this is like, it's just kind of like the same thing, except in this case, we have to do 2 steps to get the x squared by itself. What should I do first to get the x squared by itself? Add 1, okay? Plus 1. So I get 3x squared equals 1. Then what? How do I get rid of this 3? Divide it by 3, okay? So I divide by 3. I get x squared equals 1/3. Now what? Now what? Square root both sides. So I'm going to square root this side. I'm going to do plus or minus the square root of this side. So I get x equals plus or minus the square root of 1/3. This is where I like you to rationalize the denominator. So this is like saying, if you have to write this again, you get most of the credit, but it's better to write this as the square root of 1 over the square root of 3. How do I get rid of square root of 3 in the bottom? Come on. Multiply by square root of 3 over square root of 3. Okay, it's called rationalizing the denominator. Multiply square root of 3 by square root of 3. What's 1 times the square root of 3? Square root of 3. And what's root of 3 times root of 3? 3. So that's your best answer like that. Okay? X equals plus or minus the square root of 3 over 3. If you left it like this, depending on what kind of mood I'm in, I might take off points or not, but this is better. Okay? So you try, you try, you try, you try. 2x squared minus 5 equals 0. 2x squared minus 5 equals 0. Ready, go. And you should have gotten x. I'm not going to go through all the steps. X is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5, right? Square root of 5 over square root of 5 over 2, like that, right? To rationalize that, you multiply by root of 2 over root of 2, which gives you plus or minus root of 10 over 2. That's your best answer. If you left it like this again, it's okay, this is better. Okay, but once you got that, that's great. Okay? Now, 2 more examples, I think, and then, 3 more examples. We're going to have some time to do this. Okay, so, am I still recording? I am. So say I had something that looks like this. 2x squared plus 200 equals 0. Okay? What should I do first? Subtract. This isn't a whiteboard thing, it's more like an example. Minus 200, okay? And I get 2x squared equals negative 200. Divide by 2, right? Divide by 2. I get x squared equals negative 100. What do I do with that? I square root it, okay? X squared equals plus or minus the square root of negative 100, right? Negative 100. How can I write the square root of negative 100? 10, perfect, okay? So x squared, whoops, not x squared, x, not x squared, okay? X, whoops, I keep getting the wrong tools, okay? X is equal to, that's equal to plus or minus the square root of 100 times the square root of negative 1, which can be written as x equals plus or minus 10i. Okay? So what does that mean? Let me just tell you, okay? If you're looking where x squared is equal to 100 and this were a parabola, what you're finding is where this parabola, the x values where this parabola is equal to the line y equals 100. Okay? If you have imaginary answers, what that means is those two places, those two lines never cross. That's what it means. And so you have imaginary solutions. Okay? We won't worry about that yet, but just to give you, show you what it means. Okay, so here goes you try. You try. I think it's really good because I think you guys did pretty well as a class on that last test, and I think it helps to keep you focused and involved in class. So I mean the average on that last test was like 80%, which is pretty good. Okay, so try that one. So the answer to those, for those of you in the viewing audience, was x equals plus or minus 2i. We're not going to go over that, okay? If you see something that looks like this, which you will, x minus 3 squared equals 16. Anyone have any idea how to do something like that? Go ahead. Mandy.
Can you foil it?
No, you don't have to foil it. You could, but that would be a pain in the neck. What would you do, Calvin?
Square root it.
Right. The easiest thing to do in this case is square root both sides. And here you square root that side, and you get plus or minus, right, square root of 16. So when you square root this side, you get x minus 3. What is the square root of 16? 4. So you get plus or minus 4. So here you have, right? So now you have two answers. You have to kind of break it up into two separate equations. X minus 3 equals 4, or x minus 3 equals negative 4. And then I add 3 to both sides. Plus 3, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3, right? And over here, what do I get? X equals 7. This goes away. Here I get x equals what? Negative 1. Okay? Just to make sure, you should, whoops, I wrote negative 4. I meant negative 1. Okay? Just to make sure, I'm going to plug in negative 1 over here. Okay? Make sure it works. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. Square it. I get 16, right? And so 16 equals 16. It works. 7, plug it in here. 7 minus 3 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Square root of 16 equals, or 16 equals 16, so it works. Rather than have you do a you try, I want to do this sage and scribe thing because it's good. Okay? So